Rosicrucian Secrets, the hidden codex that unlocks your destiny. Introduction. At the twilight of the Renaissance, when Europe was still breathing the air of a scientific and spiritual revolution, a manuscript emerged from the shadows, challenging the limits of human knowledge. It was the year 1614 when Fama Fraternitatis, the first Rosicrucian manifesto, came to light in Kassel, Germany. Attributed to an enigmatic brotherhood of sages, the Rosicrucians, this text not only shook the foundations of intellectual Europe, but planted a seed of mystery that endures to this day. The Rosicrucians presented themselves as guardians of ancient wisdom, heirs to traditions that fused medieval alchemy, Jewish Kabbalah, hermetic philosophy, and the early sparks of modern science. Their promise was bold: to reveal a hidden truth capable of transforming not just individual destiny, but the course of humanity itself. Yet their existence was elusive. No faces, no headquarters, no public ceremonies, only words, symbols and riddles that challenged seekers to decipher a hidden code. Who were these mysterious brethren? Was the fraternity a real group of initiates, or merely a literary allegory? Why did their message centered on spiritual reform and mastering the invisible forces of nature resonate so strongly in an era marked by war, superstition, and the Inquisition? The legend spoke of a mythical founder, Christian Rosenkreutz, a 15th-century traveler who had absorbed the knowledge of Arab sages, Persian mystics, and secret masters, synthesizing it into a lost codex, the key to unlocking the universe's secrets. This book is not just a historical journey through the Rosicrucian manifestos and their contexts. It is an invitation into a labyrinth of symbols, where each turn reveals connections between science, magic, and the human psyche. We will explore how these encrypted texts inspired figures like Isaac Newton, Goethe, and Carl Jung, and how their underground influence permeated secret societies, artistic movements, and even modern psychology. But beyond academia, this journey is personal. The Rosicrucians did not offer answers, they offered mirrors. Their enigmas demand that the reader activate their intuition, question established beliefs, and seek their own spark of illumination. In a world where the material and the spiritual remain in apparent conflict, the hidden code of 1614 re-emerges as a reminder. Destiny is not written, but it can be decoded. Prepare for a journey where history, myth, and metaphysics intertwine. The search for the lost codex begins here. Chapter 1. Rosicrucians' Origins and Philosophy. In the early 17th century, Europe was a crucible of tension. The Protestant Reformation and Catholic Counter-Reformation were tearing society apart, while telescopes and microscopes were beginning to redefine the perception of the cosmos. Amid this chaos, three anonymous texts emerged as beacons of a silent revolution: Fama Fraternitatis, 1614, Confessio Fraternitatis, 1615, and the Chymical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, 1016, formed the foundational triad of the Rosicrucian enigma. These were not mere books but coded summons, maps leading toward the transcendent. Fama Fraternitatis, the cry of a shared secret. The first manifesto reads like an urgent proclamation, written in German and addressed to all scholars and rulers of Europe. It tells the story of Christian Rosenkreutz, a 15th-century German mystic who, after traveling through Damascus, Egypt, and Morocco, is said to have absorbed forbidden wisdom ranging from Arabic medicine to sacred geometry. Upon his return, he founded a brotherhood of 7 members, entrusted with guarding an eternal fire of knowledge. The tomb of Rosenkreutz, allegedly discovered 120 years after his death, is described as a circular chamber with golden inscriptions, books made of light, and artifacts that defy known physics. But the manifesto's core message is not archaeological. It is ethical. Truth must not be monopolized. The Rosicrucians present themselves as invisible guides for those prepared to seek. Confessio Fraternitatis, Between Apocalypse and Hope. Published a year later in Latin, the language of scholars, this second text deepens the messianic tone. Here, the Brotherhood warns of an imminent universal reformation, preceded by cosmic signs and social upheaval. The Confessio blends biblical prophecy with radical discourse, denouncing the corruption of the Church, the vanity of the aristocracy, and the blindness of academia. Yet, it is not a nihilistic text. Within its pages, key principles emerge. The unity of the divine and the natural. God is a circle whose center is everywhere. Alchemy as a spiritual metaphor. The common man sees lead. The initiate sees latent gold. The call to silent action. Do not seek us in palaces, but in the heart of your dreams. The third manifesto, attributed to Lutheran theologian Johann Valentine Andreae, is the most enigmatic. Written as a dreamlike tale, it follows Rosenkreutz as he receives an invitation to a wedding in an alchemical castle. There, the guests representing planets, metals, and virtues must pass a series of trials, deciphering hieroglyphs, resurrecting a sacrificed maiden, and participating in the great work of transmuting matter into spirit. Each scene serves as a mirror: the death of the king and queen, the dissolution of the ego, the blood that fertilizes the earth, the rebirth of the soul, and the final ascent to an inverted Tower of Babel. Andreae may have deliberately played with ambiguity. Was this a satire on the occult excesses of his time, or a veiled manual for initiates? The code behind the words beyond their explicit content. These manifestos operate on multiple layers. Their authors use deliberately ambiguous language, blending scientific terms such as microcosm or magnetism with hermetic symbols: the rose, the cross, the phoenix. The rose, for example, is not just a flower, it represents the secret that blooms in silence. Its petals conceal the center, and the blood of Christ, the union of the human and the divine. The cross, in turn, evokes the four elements, the cardinal points, and incarnation into matter. These texts were not meant to be merely read, but experienced. Every phrase is a riddle demanding an inner response. As a 17th century scholar wrote, "The Rosicrucians whisper, but their echoes are thunder. Philosophical principles, the alchemy of the soul." The Rosicrucian manifestos were not mere treatises. They were maps for a journey toward the reinvention of the self. Beneath their symbolic language lay a revolutionary philosophy that fused mysticism with reason, tradition with rebellion. The Brotherhood proposed a system built upon three pillars: the unity of the divine and the natural, inner transformation as the path to liberation, and the ethics of silent service. 1. The unity of the macrocosm and the microcosm. For the Rosicrucians, the universe was a living organism, a great man, macrocosm, whose laws were reflected within the human being, microcosm. This idea, inherited from Hermeticism and Kabbalah, held that each individual carried within them the keys to understanding and altering the structure of reality. The Confessio Fraternitatis states, "Just as iron moves toward the magnet, the wise soul moves toward the hidden light within all things." This principle challenged the mechanistic worldview that was beginning to dominate science. While Galileo pointed his telescope at the stars, the Rosicrucians suggested that the true instrument of knowledge was a purified consciousness. 2. Inner alchemy. From darkness to light. Rosicrucian alchemy was not about transmuting metals, but transforming the alchemist. The texts describe a process of death and rebirth in 7 stages: calcination, dissolution, separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, and coagulation, mirroring the 7 days of biblical creation. Each stage represented purification, calcination, the destruction of material illusions. Fermentation, the integration of the divine into the human. Coagulation, the birth of the body of light, a state of spiritual immortality. This path required no laboratory, only constant awareness. As the Fama warns, the fire you seek burns within your own being. 3. Knowledge as service. Unlike esoteric orders that hoarded secrets to accumulate power, the Rosicrucians insisted that wisdom must be used for the common good. Their oath included 3 vows. Free healing. Members were to treat the sick without accepting payment. Anonymity. They would never reveal their affiliation with the fraternity. Passing on the legacy. Each member had to find a worthy successor before dying. This ethical code set them apart from charlatans and courtiers. True enlightenment, they taught, was not measured by mystical visions, but by acts of compassion. 4. Tolerance and universalism. In a Europe ravaged by religious wars, the manifestos proclaimed an unprecedented openness. We are bound by no dogma, neither Rome nor Wittenberg. The brotherhood accepted seekers from all traditions as long as they pursued the truth behind the veil of forms. This stance was radical and dangerous in an era when Giordano Bruno had been burned at the stake for heresy in 1600. 5. The invisible enemy, arrogant ignorance. The Rosicrucians identified a greater evil than sin: intellectual arrogance. The Confessio denounces those who worship books instead of understanding them and debate God while trampling their fellow man. This was not anti-intellectualism, but rejection of knowledge used for selfish ends. True wisdom, they insisted, requires humility. He who believes he knows everything does not know that he does not know. The Rosicrucian paradox. Here lies the foundational contradiction of the order. How do you spread knowledge that, by definition, cannot be conveyed in words? The manifestos answer with metaphors. They compare their doctrine to a seed. If you cast it upon barren ground, it will perish. If you plant it in fertile soils, it will grow into a tree whose roots remain unseen. This approach foreshadowed ideas, later explored by Jungian psychology and existentialism. Truth is not an object but a process. As an anonymous adept wrote in 1923, we do not seek followers, but accomplices in the crime of awakening. Heaven, symbolism, the language of the initiates. The Rosicrucian manifestos are not written in common language, but in a symbolic code that transcends words. Every image, every metaphor, is a gateway to deeper meaning. For the Rosicrucians, symbols were not mere literary ornaments, but tools of transformation. Through them, the reader could access truths that rational discourse alone could not grasp. 1. The rose and the cross, the union of opposites. The most emblematic symbol of the order is, without a doubt, the rose and the cross. At first glance, it may seem like an arbitrary combination, but its meaning is profound and multifaceted. The rose represents the soul, ephemeral beauty, and the mystery that reveals itself only to those who approach with delicacy. Its spiral petals suggest a path to the hidden center, the secret that cannot be spoken. The cross, a symbol of matter, suffering, and incarnation. Its 4 arms allude to the elements: earth, water, air, fire, the cardinal points, and manifestation in the physical world. Together, the rose and cross symbolize the union of the divine and the human, the eternal and the temporal. It is an invitation to transcend dualities. Heaven is in the earth, and the earth is in heaven, states the Confessio Fraternitatis. 2. The phoenix, death and rebirth. The phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes, is another central symbol. In the manifestos, it serves as a metaphor for the alchemical process. The destruction of the ego, the death of the king, is the prelude to spiritual resurrection. This theme is particularly developed in the Chymical wedding, where characters must symbolically die to reach a higher state. The phoenix also represents the idea that true knowledge is not inherited. It must be rediscovered by each generation. 3. The labyrinth. The journey of the soul. The labyrinth is a recurring motif in Rosicrucian texts. It represents the spiritual path, full of twists and apparent setbacks. It is not an obstacle but a necessary test. Only those who get lost can truly find themselves. In the Fama Fraternitatis, Christian Rosenkreutz's tomb is described as a circular labyrinth, with inscriptions that can only be read upon reaching the center. This symbol suggests that truth is not found at the end of the path, but in the act of walking itself. 4. The sun and moon. The creative duality. In alchemy, the sun and moon represent the masculine and feminine principles, sulfur and mercury, consciousness and intuition. The Rosicrucian manifestos depict them as complementary forces that must be balanced. In the Chymical wedding, the alchemical marriage of the king, sun, and the queen moon is the central event, symbolizing the integration of opposites within the soul of the initiate. 5. The number 7. Cosmic perfection. The number 7 appears repeatedly in the texts: 7 planets, 7 metals, 7 days of creation, 7 days of creation, 7 stages of alchemy. For the Rosicrucians, it represents completeness, the full cycle that leads to perfection. In the Fama, the brotherhood consists of 7 members, each entrusted with guarding a part of universal knowledge. 6. The mirror. Reflection of truth. The mirror is a key symbol in Rosicrucian thought. It represents the soul's ability to reflect divine light, but also the illusion of material reality. The Confessio Fraternitatis states, "The world is a mirror that shows every man his own face." This symbol calls for introspection. Only those who know themselves can truly know the universe. 7. The garden. The recovered paradise. The garden is a recurring image in the manifestos, evoking the lost Eden and the possibility of restoring original harmony. In the Chymical wedding, the alchemical castle is surrounded by a garden where magical plants grow, symbols of the virtues the initiate must cultivate. This garden is not a physical place, but a state of the soul. Paradise is not in the heavens but in the purified heart, declares the Fama. Language as alchemy. Rosicrucian symbols are not static, they evolve with the reader. As one anonymous adept wrote, "A symbol is a mirror that changes with the one who gazes upon it." This makes the manifestos living texts, capable of revealing new layers of meaning with each reading. Chapter 2. Decrypt its codes, symbols and keys. Exploring Rosicrucian symbols. The rose, the cross, the pelican, and the phoenix. Symbols are at the heart of Rosicrucian language. They are not mere graphic representations, but keys that open doors to hidden dimensions of reality. Each symbol is a map, a mirror, and a tool, designed to guide the seeker on their journey toward enlightenment. This section explores 4 of the most emblematic symbols in the Rosicrucian tradition: the rose, the cross, the pelican, and the phoenix. 1. The rose, the mystery that blooms. The rose is undoubtedly the most recognizable symbol of the Rosicrucian tradition. Its beauty and fragility make it a perfect metaphor for the human soul, but its meaning goes beyond the obvious. The hidden center, The rose has a center that is not immediately visible, symbolizing the core of being something that remains hidden even from oneself. The process of unfolding. The petals of the rose open gradually, representing the awakening of consciousness. Each petal is a stage in the spiritual path, a step toward final revelation. The thorn and the pain. The thorns of the rose remind us that spiritual growth is not without suffering. The path to enlightenment requires sacrifice and detachment. In the manifestos, the rose appears alongside the cross, suggesting that the spiritual path is not only about ascent, but also integration. The rose blooms on the cross, and the cross is illuminated by the rose. This union symbolizes the harmony between the divine and the human, the eternal and the temporal. The cross, the bridge between worlds. The cross is a universal symbol found in nearly all spiritual traditions. In the Rosicrucian context, it carries specific meanings. The four elements. The arms of the cross represent the four elements: earth, water, air, fire, which must be balanced in the alchemical process. Incarnation. The cross symbolizes the union of the vertical, the divine, and the horizontal, the human. Transformative suffering. It serves as a reminder that spiritual growth requires sacrifice and surrender. In Rosicrucian texts, the cross is not an instrument of torture but a bridge between worlds. As the Confessio Fraternitatis states, the cross is the tree of life, whose roots are in heaven and whose branches touch the earth. 3. The pelican. Sacrifice for greater good. The pelican is a lesser-known but equally powerful symbol. In medieval iconography, it was believed that the pelican fed its young with its own blood, becoming a metaphor for unconditional love and sacrifice. For the Rosicrucians, this symbol represents selfless service. The initiate must be willing to give of themselves for the good of humanity. Spiritual nourishment. The pelican symbolizes the transmission of knowledge, which feeds the soul just as blood nourishes the body. In the Chymical wedding, the pelican appears as a stained glass window within the alchemical castle, reminding the guests that true wisdom is not sought for oneself, but to be shared. 4. The phoenix. Radical transformation. The phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes, is another central symbol in Rosicrucian tradition. It represents death and rebirth. The phoenix perishes in flames only to be reborn, symbolizing the destruction of the ego and the emergence of the true self. The immortality of the soul. Unlike the body, which perishes, the spirit is eternal and constantly regenerates. Resilience. The phoenix is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is a spark of hope. In the manifestos, the phoenix appears as a guide for the initiate, showing that the spiritual journey is not linear but cyclical. The language of symbols. Rosicrucian symbols are not static. Their meaning depends on context and the reader's state of consciousness. They are living tools that help seekers navigate the turbulent waters of inner transformation. As an anonymous adept wrote, "A symbol is a map, but it is also the territory. In deciphering it, you decipher yourself." Deciphering hidden messages in texts and images. The Rosicrucian manifestos were not meant to be read superficially. Every word, every image, is a layer of a code that can only be unlocked through a multidimensional approach. This process is not merely intellectual. It requires intuition, patience, and, above all, a willingness to transform as one deepens in understanding. 1. The art of symbolic reading. The first step in deciphering hidden messages is learning to read symbolically. This involves looking beyond the literal. Rosicrucian texts are filled with metaphors and allegories. For example, When the Fama Fraternitatis speaks of the tomb of Christian Rosenkreutz, it does not refer to a physical place, but to a state of consciousness. Identifying patterns, symbols do not appear in isolation. They form networks of meaning. The rose, the cross, the pelican, and the phoenix are not independent elements but parts of a coherent whole. Understanding historical context. Many Rosicrucian symbols have roots in earlier traditions such as alchemy, Kabbalah, and hermeticism. Recognizing these connections enriches interpretation. 2. Meditation as a deciphering tool. Reason alone is not enough to grasp Rosicrucian texts. Meditation is essential for accessing deeper levels of meaning. Some techniques suggested within the texts include visualization, imagining symbols in the mind, allowing them to manifest fully. For instance, visualizing the rose and the cross merging into a single emblem. Silent contemplation, observing a symbol without attempting to analyze it, letting its meaning emerge naturally. Inner dialogue, asking what a symbol represents in one's own life and how its teaching can be applied. 3. The numerical code. Sacred mathematics. Numbers play a crucial role in Rosicrucian texts. They are not mere quantities but symbols themselves. Key examples include the number 3 represents the Trinity, body, soul, spirit, and the process of synthesis, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The number 7 symbolizes totality and perfection, as seen in the 7 planets, 7 metals, and 7 stages of alchemy. The number 12 signifies completeness, as in the 12 zodiac signs, or the 12 apostles. In the manifestos, numbers are never random. They form part of a code that guides the reader toward deeper 4, the language of images. The illustrations accompanying Rosicrucian texts are not mere decorations. They are integral to the message. To decipher them, one must examine the details. Every element in an image carries meaning. For example, in the illustrations of the Chymical wedding, the colors, shapes, and positions of characters convey key information. Connect images with texts. The images are not independent. They complement and expand the meaning of the words. Interpret in layers. A single image can have multiple levels of meaning, from the literal to the symbolic and spiritual. 5. Practical application. Deciphering hidden messages is not an end in itself. It is a means to transform one's life. Rosicrucian texts suggest that knowledge must be put into practice through purification of the soul, applying symbolic teachings to cleanse the heart of selfishness and vanity, service to others, using acquired wisdom to help those who seek the light, integration of opposites, learning to balance seemingly opposing forces within one's own life. Deciphering as an inner journey. Unraveling hidden messages is not just an intellectual exercise. It is an inner journey that transforms the seeker. As an anonymous adept wrote, "The code is not in the texts but in you. In deciphering them, you decipher yourself." The relationship between symbols and the individual's spiritual journey. Rosicrucian symbols are not static representations. They are dynamic tools that interact with the seeker on their spiritual path. Each symbol is a mirror reflecting a stage of the journey, a guide pointing in the right direction, and a reminder of the challenges that must be overcome. This section explores how Rosicrucian symbols, the rose, the cross, the pelican, and the phoenix relate to the individual's spiritual journey. 1. The rose, the awakening of consciousness. The rose symbolizes the soul's process of unfolding and growth. On the spiritual journey, it represents the initial search, first contact with mystery, when the seeker senses that there is more beyond the visible world. Gradual awakening. Each petal that opens symbolizes a new understanding, a step toward enlightenment. The hidden center, the core of the rose, unseen at first glance, represents the ultimate truth that can only be reached through introspection and purification. In the context of spiritual evolution, the rose serves as a reminder that growth is not linear. There are moments of blossoming and periods of apparent stagnation, but every stage is necessary. 2. The cross, the balance between the divine and the human. The cross symbolizes integration and balance. In the spiritual journey, it represents incarnation, the necessity of living in the material world without losing sight of the spiritual. Transformative suffering, the trials and difficulties that purify the soul and prepare it for illumination. The union of opposites, the reconciliation of seemingly contradictory forces, masculine and feminine, light darkness, heaven earth. For the seeker, the cross is a reminder that the spiritual path is not an escape from the world but a transformation of one's relationship with it. 3. The pelican, selfless service. The pelican symbolizes unconditional love and sacrifice for the greater good. In the spiritual journey, it represents generosity, the willingness to share knowledge and wisdom with those who seek it. Humility, the realization that true spiritual growth is not measured by personal achievements, but by one's impact on others. Spiritual nourishment, the idea that knowledge should feed the soul, not just the mind. The pelican is a reminder that the spiritual journey is not an end in itself, but a means to serve humanity. 4. The phoenix, death and rebirth. The phoenix is a symbol of radical transformation. In the spiritual journey, it represents the death of the ego, the need to abandon illusions and false identifications to be reborn as an authentic being. Resilience, the ability to rise again and again, even after the most painful failures. The immortality of the soul, the understanding that the spirit is eternal and that physical death is only a transition. For the seeker, the phoenix serves as a reminder that the spiritual path is not easy, but every fall is an opportunity to be reborn stronger. 5. The interaction between symbols. Rosicrucian symbols do not function in isolation. They interact to guide the seeker along their path. For example, the rose and the cross. Together, they represent the union of the human and the divine, the integration of opposing forces. The pelican and the phoenix. The sacrifice of the pelican nourishes the rebirth of the phoenix, suggesting that selfless service is the key to spiritual transformation. 6. The journey as synthesis. The spiritual journey is not a series of separate stages but a process of synthesis in which symbols integrate into a deeper understanding. At the end of the path, the seeker does not merely understand the symbols, they become them. The rose, the soul fully blossoms. The cross, the divine and human are reconciled. The pelican, service becomes a natural expression of being. The phoenix, the ego dies, allowing the authentic self to emerge. The symbol as a guide. Rosicrucian symbols are not just representations. They are living guides that accompany the seeker at every step of the journey. As an anonymous adept wrote, "A symbol is not something to be seen. It is something to be lived. In understanding it, you become it." The relationship between symbols and the individual spiritual journey. Rosicrucian symbols are not static representations. They are dynamic tools that interact with the seeker on their spiritual path. Each symbol serves as a mirror reflecting a stage of the journey, a guide pointing the way forward, and a reminder of the challenges that must be overcome. This section explores how Rosicrucian symbols, the rose, the cross, the pelican, and the phoenix relate to the individual spiritual journey. 1. The rose. The awakening of consciousness. The rose symbolizes the soul's process of unfolding and growth. In the spiritual journey, it represents The initial search. The first encounter with mystery, when the seeker senses that there is something beyond the visible world. Gradual awakening. Each petal that opens symbolizes a new level of understanding, a step toward enlightenment. The hidden center, the core of the rose, unseen at first glance, represents the ultimate truth, which can only be reached through introspection and purification. Within the spiritual journey, the rose is a reminder that growth is not linear. There are moments of blossoming and periods of apparent stagnation, but every stage is essential. 2. Decode. The cross. The balance between the divine and the human. The cross is a symbol of integration and balance. In the spiritual journey, it represents incarnation, the necessity of living in the material world while remaining connected to the spiritual. Transformative suffering, the trials and challenges that purify the soul and prepare it for illumination. The union of opposites, the reconciliation of seemingly contradictory forces, masculine and feminine, light, dark, heaven, earth. For the seeker, the cross serves as a reminder that the spiritual path is not about escaping the world, but transforming one's relationship with it. 3. The pelican, selfless service. The pelican symbolizes unconditional love and sacrifice for the greater good. In the spiritual journey, it represents generosity, the willingness to share knowledge and wisdom with those who seek it. Humility, the understanding that true spiritual growth is not measured by personal achievements but by one's impact on others. Spiritual nourishment, the idea that knowledge should feed the soul, not just the intellect. The pelican serves as a reminder that the spiritual journey is not an end in itself, but a means to serve humanity. 4. The phoenix, death and rebirth. The phoenix is a symbol of radical transformation. In the spiritual journey, it represents the death of the ego, the need to shed illusions and false identities to be reborn as an authentic self. Resilience, the ability to rise again and again, even after the most painful failures. The immortality of the soul, the understanding that the spirit is eternal and that physical death is merely a transition. For the seeker, the phoenix serves as a reminder that the spiritual path is not easy, but every fall is an opportunity to be reborn stronger. 5. The interaction between symbols. Rosicrucian symbols do not function in isolation. They interact to guide the seeker along their journey. For example, the rose and the cross. Together, they represent the union of the human and the divine, the integration of opposing forces. The pelican and the phoenix. The sacrifice of the pelican nourishes the rebirth of the phoenix, suggesting that selfless service is the key to spiritual transformation. 6. The journey as synthesis. The spiritual journey is not a series of separate stages, but a process of synthesis in which symbols integrate into a deeper understanding. At the end of the path, the seeker does not merely understand the symbols, they become them. The rose, the soul blooms in its fullness. The cross, the divine and the human are reconciled. The pelican, service becomes a natural expression of being. The phoenix, the ego dies, allowing the true self to emerge, the symbol as a guide. Rosicrucian symbols are not just representations. They are living guides that accompany the seeker through every step of the journey. As an anonymous adept wrote, a symbol is not something to be seen. It is something to be lived. In understanding it, you become it. Chapter 3. The Alchemy and the Soul. Alchemy as a metaphor for spiritual transformation. Alchemy, far from being a primitive chemical practice, is a profound and universal metaphor for spiritual transformation. For the Rosicrucians, Alchemy was not merely about transmuting base metals into gold. It was a symbolic language describing the evolution of the human soul toward its purest and most luminous state. This section explores how alchemy serves as a map for the inner journey, a guide that teaches us to turn the lead of our limitations into the gold of enlightenment. The great work, the purpose of alchemy. At the heart of alchemy lies the great work, magnum opus, the process of transformation leading to perfection. For alchemists, this was not just a goal, but a path requiring patience, discipline, and a deep understanding of both natural and spiritual laws. In spiritual terms, the great work is the reinvention of the self, the creation of an immortal body of light from the raw matter of human existence. The Rosicrucians embraced this metaphor but adapted it to their worldview. For them, the great work was not an external process but an internal one. The true laboratory is not in the workshop but in the heart of man, states the Confessio Fraternitatis. The three alchemical principles, sulfur, mercury, and salt. Alchemy is based on three fundamental principles, which also symbolize forces operating within the human being. Sulfur represents spirit, will, and inner fire, the divine spark that drives transformation. Mercury symbolizes the soul, intuition, and fluidity, the mediator between spirit and matter. Salt embodies the body, stability, and form the vehicle through which the spiritual manifests in the material world. In the Rosicrucian tradition, these three principles must be balanced for transformation to occur. Sulfur provides direction, mercury offers adaptability, and salt ensures a solid foundation. Together, they form the triad that sustains the great work. The alchemical marriage, the union of opposites. One of the most powerful symbols in alchemy is the alchemical marriage, the union of the sun and moon, king and queen, masculine and feminine. This is not a physical fusion, but an integration of seemingly opposing forces within the seeker's soul. In the Chymical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, this concept unfolds in a symbolic narrative where the protagonist attends a wedding in an alchemical castle. There, guests must overcome trials representing the stages of spiritual transformation. The alchemical marriage is not the end of the journey but the beginning of a new phase. When heaven and earth unite, the new man is born, the text declares. The inner laboratory, the body as a crucible. For the Rosicrucians, the true alchemical laboratory was not a workshop filled with flasks and furnaces, but the seeker's own body and mind. The body is the crucible where transformation takes place, and the mind is the fire that fuels it. This perspective makes alchemy an accessible practice for anyone, regardless of their external circumstances. The manifestos describe the alchemical process as a series of internal operations: calcination, the destruction of illusions and attachments; sublimation, the elevation of consciousness toward the divine; coagulation, the manifestation of the spiritual in daily life; the philosopher's stone, the goal of the journey. The philosopher's stone, the ultimate goal of alchemy, is not a physical substance but a state of consciousness. It represents spiritual perfection, union with the divine, and the ability to transform reality from within. For the Rosicrucians, the philosopher's stone symbolizes enlightenment, the moment when the seeker becomes a co-creator of the universe. In the Fama Fraternitatis, the philosopher's stone is described as the light that shines in the darkness, the truth that frees man from his prison. This light is not something found outside but discovered within through inner work. Alchemy is a way of life. Alchemy is not an occasional practice but a lifelong path. It demands commitment, patience, and a willingness to confront one's own shadows. Yet, it offers an incomparable reward. the transformation of lead into gold, darkness into light, ignorance into wisdom. As an anonymous adept wrote, "The alchemist does not seek to change the world but to change himself." And in doing so, he discovers that the world has changed with him. The 7 steps of the alchemical process and their application in modern life. The alchemical process, as understood by the Rosicrucians, is not a set of chemical operations, but a series of spiritual stages leading to the transformation of the soul. These 7 steps, known as the 7 alchemical operations, form a detailed map of the inner journey. Though described in a medieval context, their relevance transcends time and can be applied to modern life. This section explores each of these stages and how they can be integrated into today's spiritual quest. 1. Calcination, the destruction of the false self. Calcination is the first step of the alchemical process. It symbolizes the burning away of impurities, the destruction of illusions, and the release of attachments that keep us tied to the superficial. In modern terms, calcination can be understood as detachment from materialism, letting go of the obsession with possessions and status. Ego death, recognizing and dissolving the masks that conceal our authentic self. The fire of awareness, using introspection and self-inquiry to identify what no longer serves us. In contemporary life, calcination can be practiced through meditation, journaling, or therapy methods that help confront personal shadows and break free from destructive patterns. 2. Dissolution, the release of emotional blockages. Dissolution is the process of breaking down what has been calcined, allowing repressed emotions to surface. This step is crucial for healing old wounds and freeing emotional energy. In modern life, dissolution can be applied through emotional expression, allowing oneself to feel and express emotions like sadness, anger, or fear. Therapy or coaching, working with professionals to process trauma and painful experiences. Connection with nature, using water as a symbol of purification, whether through relaxing baths, walks by the ocean, or simply drinking water mindfully. 3. Separation, clarifying the essential self. Once impurities have been dissolved, the next step is to separate the essential from the non-essential. This stage involves discerning which aspects of our life and personality are authentic and which are merely social constructs. In modern practice, separation can include simplification, reducing mental and material clutter to focus on what truly matters. Meditation, using mindfulness techniques to observe thoughts without identifying with them. Conscious decision-making, choosing relationships, work, and activities that align with one's purpose. 4. Conjunction, the integration of opposites. Conjunction is the moment when the separated elements are recombined into a new synthesis. It represents the reconciliation of seemingly opposing forces within us, masculine and feminine, reason and intuition, light and shadow. In modern life, this step can be applied through collaboration, learning to work with people whose skills complement our own, embracing polarities, recognizing that opposites are not enemies, but parts of a greater whole. Creativity, using art, music, or writing as a means of expressing the union of dual forces. 5. Fermentation, inner transformation. Fermentation is the process in which alchemical matter begins to transform, activated by a catalyst often symbolized as yeast. Spiritually, this step represents the divine spark that ignites inner growth. In contemporary life, fermentation can be experienced through sacred encounters, engaging in rituals, ceremonies, or spiritual practices that inspire deep transformation. Lifelong learning, reading, attending workshops, or listening to podcasts that expand consciousness. Flow states, immersing oneself in activities that create a sense of timelessness, such as art, sports, or meditation. 6. Distillation. The purification of the spirit. Distillation is the process of refining what has been fermented, removing the last impurities. It represents the final purification of the soul, leaving only what is essential. In modern life, this step can be applied through deep reflection, taking time to contemplate the lessons learned along the way. Daily spiritual practice. Meditating, praying, or practicing yoga to maintain a connection with the divine. Service to others. Using acquired knowledge and wisdom to help those in need. 7. Coagulation. The manifestation of the spiritual in everyday life. Coagulation is the final step of the alchemical process, where the spiritual is fully embodied in the physical world. It represents the integration of enlightenment into daily life. In modern terms, the step can be lived through conscious action, living in alignment with spiritual values and principles, creating a legacy, sharing knowledge and wisdom with future generations, celebrating life, seeing each moment as an expression of the divine. Alchemy in the 21st century. The 7 steps of the alchemical process are not a rigid formula but a flexible guide that can be adapted to each person's unique journey. In a fast-paced world full of distractions, alchemy offers a path to inner peace, authenticity, and connection with the sacred. As an anonymous adept wrote, "Gold is not found in the laboratory but in the heart of the seeker." How to achieve enlightenment through the purification of the self prevents us from shining in our fullness. For the Rosicrucians, this process is akin to the refinement of gold, removing impurities to reveal the luminous essence that has always been there. In modern life, purification can be understood as physical cleansing, taking care of the body through healthy eating, exercise, and habits that promote well-being. Mental clarity, freeing the mind from negative thoughts, worries, and unnecessary distractions. Spiritual elevation, connecting with the sacred through meditation, prayer, or practices that nurture the soul. 2. The 3 stages of purification. The purification of the self can be divided into 3 main stages, each corresponding to a level of our existence. Purification of the body. The body is the temple of the spirit, and its care is the first step toward enlightenment. This stage includes enlightenment, in the Rosicrucian context, is not a mystical state reserved for a select few, but a gradual process of purification and transformation that is accessible to anyone willing to embark on the inner journey. This section explores how the purification of the self, a central concept in spiritual alchemy, can lead us toward enlightenment, understood as the full realization of our divine potential. 1. Purification as the path to light. Purification is not a single act, but an ongoing process that involves cleaning the body, mind, and spirit of everything that detoxification. Removing physical and emotional toxins through diets, fasting, or cleansing therapies. Harmonization, aligning the body with natural rhythms through practices like yoga, tai chi, or conscious breathing. Respect, treating the body with love and gratitude, recognizing it as a sacred vessel. Purification of the mind. The mind is the bridge between the body and the spirit, and its purification is essential for achieving enlightenment. This stage involves kinfalls, inner silence, cultivating mental stillness through meditation and mindfulness, renunciation of illusions, letting go of limiting beliefs, prejudices, and attachments that distort our perception of reality. Continuous education, feeding the mind with knowledge that expands consciousness and fosters personal growth. Purification of the spirit. The spirit is the eternal essence that transcends both body and mind. Its purification is the final step toward enlightenment and includes reconnection with the divine, establishing an intimate relationship with the sacred, whether through prayer, contemplation, or service, integration of the shadows, accepting and transforming the dark parts of oneself, turning them into sources of strength and wisdom, expression of unconditional love, living from the heart, practicing compassion, generosity, and forgiveness. 3. Tools for purification. The Rosicrucians proposed various tools to facilitate the purification process. Some of these, adapted to the modern context, include meditation, an essential practice for calming the mind, connecting with the spirit, and accessing higher states of consciousness. Study of symbols. Rosicrucian symbols such as the rose and the cross are keys that open doors to deeper levels of understanding. Selfless service, helping others without expecting reward, is a powerful way to purify the heart and elevate the spirit. Inner alchemy, applying the 7 steps of the alchemical process: calcination, dissolution, separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, and coagulation, to transform impurities into virtues. 4. Enlightenment as a state of union. Enlightenment is not a final destination, but a state of union with the divine that can be experienced here and now. For the Rosicrucians, this state is characterized by the consciousness of unity, perceiving that all is interconnected and that there is no separation between the self and the universe. Inner peace, living in harmony with oneself and the world, regardless of external circumstances. Divine creativity, expressing the fullness of being through acts of love, beauty, and wisdom. 5. The endless journey. Enlightenment is not point of arrival, but an endless journey. Even after achieving elevated states of consciousness, the seeker continues to grow, learn, and evolve. As an anonymous adept wrote, "Light has no limits, and whoever believes they have reached it has only seen a glimpse of its infinite splendor." Chapter 4. The Hidden Codex. Discover your destiny. How to apply Rosicrucian teachings in everyday life. Rosicrucian teachings are not meant to be abstract theories or practices reserved for spiritual retreats. On the contrary, they are living tools designed to integrate into everyday life, transforming each action, thought, and relationship into an opportunity for spiritual growth. This section explores how Rosicrucian teachings can be applied day to day, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary and the mundane into the sacred. 1. Spirituality in everyday life. For the Rosicrucians, the sacred is not separate from the profane. It is present in every moment and every place. The key is learning to see with the eyes of the Spirit, recognizing the divine in the small things. The dawn ritual. Starting the day with gratitude, dedicating a few minutes to meditation or contemplation. Mindfulness in actions. Performing daily tasks such as cooking, cleaning, or working with full attention, turning them into acts of devotion. Connection with nature. Observing the sky, listening to birds, or feeling the wind as reminders of the divine presence. 2. The 3 pillars of Rosicrucian practice. The Rosicrucian teachings are supported by 3 foundational pillars that can easily be integrated into daily life. Conscious study. Knowledge is a powerful tool for spiritual growth. In everyday life, this can translate to inspirational reading, dedicating time to read spiritual, philosophical, or scientific texts that expand consciousness. Daily reflection, taking notes, journaling, or simply thinking about the lessons learned during the day. Meaningful dialogue, sharing ideas and experiences with others who are also seeking spiritual growth. B. Meditation and introspection. Meditation is a central practice in the Rosicrucian tradition, but it doesn't require hours of absolute silence. In modern life, it can be adapted through mindful pauses, taking short breaks during the day to breathe deeply and center oneself. Active meditation, practicing mindfulness while walking, washing dishes, or engaging in any routine activity. Creative visualization, using imagination to visualize spiritual goals, such as soul purification or connection with the divine. C. Selfless service. Service to others is a natural expression of unconditional love and a practical way to apply Rosicrucian teachings. In everyday life, this can manifest as small acts of kindness, smiling at a stranger, helping a neighbor, or listening to someone who needs to be heard. Volunteering, dedicating time to causes that benefit the community or the environment. Spiritual mentorship, sharing knowledge and experiences with those seeking guidance on their spiritual path. 3. Alchemy in daily life. Alchemy is not just a metaphor, it is a way of life. Every day offers opportunities to turn the lead of difficulties into the gold of wisdom. Transforming conflicts, seeing challenges as opportunities to grow and learn. Purifying emotions, using techniques like conscious breathing or journaling to process negative emotions. Elevating relationships, practicing compassion, forgiveness, and empathy in interactions with others. 4. The sacred rhythm of time. The Rosicrucians understood that time is not linear but cyclical, and that every moment has a special meaning. In daily life, this can translate to celebrating natural cycles, observing the phases of the moon, the changes of the seasons, or solstices, as moments of reflection and renewal. Creating personal rituals, establishing habits that give meaning and structure to the day, such as lighting a candle at dusk or reciting an affirmation upon waking. Living in the present, practicing mindfulness to appreciate each moment as a unique gift. 5. Spirituality is a lifestyle. Applying Rosicrucian teachings in everyday life is not an additional task but a way of living. It is learning to see the sacred in the ordinary, to find light in the darkness, and to turn each day into an opportunity to grow and serve. As an anonymous adept wrote, "The heavens are not in the clouds, but in the heart of the one who knows how to look." Practical techniques for self-knowledge and spiritual development. Self-knowledge is the cornerstone of spiritual development. Without a deep understanding of who we are, where we come from, and where we are going, it is impossible to advance on the path to enlightenment. The Rosicrucians, inheritors of ancient traditions, developed practical techniques to facilitate this process of introspection and growth. This section explores some of these techniques, adapted to the modern context, which can help deepen self-awareness and accelerate spiritual development. The Spiritual Journal, a mirror of the soul. The spiritual journal is a powerful tool for recording and reflecting on your experiences, thoughts, and emotions. Unlike a regular journal, this one focuses on inner growth. Recommended practices include dream journaling, writing down dreams upon waking, as they can be messages from the unconscious. Daily reflections, writing about the challenges, lessons, and moments of gratitude from the day. Deep questions, asking yourself questions like, who am I really? What is holding me back? Or how can I better serve others? The act of writing not only helps organize thoughts, but also reveals hidden patterns and opens doors to new understandings. 2. Meditation as an inner jury. Meditation is a central practice in the Rosicrucian tradition, but it is not limited to sitting in silence. Various techniques can be adapted to your needs and lifestyle. Light meditation. Visualizing a golden light filling your body and connecting you with the divine. Meditation with symbols. Using Rosicrucian symbols like the rose or the cross as focal points for contemplation. Active meditation. Practicing mindfulness while walking, eating, or performing any routine task. Meditation not only calms the mind but also opens channels of intuition and spiritual connection. The study of symbols, keys to the unconscious. Symbols are a universal language that speaks directly to the unconscious. The Rosicrucians used symbols like the rose, the cross, the pelican, and the phoenix to convey deep teachings. Some ways to work with symbols include symbolic contemplation, observing a symbol in silence, allowing its meaning to arise intuitively. Creating personal symbols, drawing or visualizing symbols that represent your spiritual goals or internal states. Interpreting symbols in dreams, analyzing the symbols that appear in your dreams to understand messages from the unconscious. The mirror exercise. Facing your shadows. The mirror exercise is a powerful technique to confront and transform the darker parts of oneself. It involves standing in front of a mirror and looking into your own eyes for several minutes, observing the emotions and thoughts that arise without judgment, asking yourself, what am I seeing in myself that I don't want to accept? Or what do I need to heal? This exercise may be uncomfortable at first, but it is an effective way to integrate the shadows and move toward wholeness. The practice of silence. Listening to the inner voice. In a world full of noise and distractions, silence is an invaluable resource for self-knowledge. Some ways to practice silence include spiritual retreats. Dedicate a day or weekend to complete silence without technology or distractions. Daily pauses. Set aside a few minutes each day to sit in silence, doing nothing but observing your breath. Walks in nature. Strolling in a natural environment. Paying attention to the sounds and sensations without interference from thoughts. Silence not only calms the mind, but also allows you to hear the inner voice, that wise guide that always knows what is right. Creative visualization. Shaping your reality. Creative visualization is a technique that uses imagination to manifest goals and desires. In the Rosicrucian context, this technique can be used for creating an inner sanctuary, visualizing a safe and sacred space within you, where you can go in times of need. Manifesting spiritual goals. Imagining what it would be like to live in fullness, connected with the divine and in harmony with the universe. Healing emotional wounds. Visualizing healing light filling the parts of you that need healing. Service as a mirror of the soul. Selfless service not only benefits others, but it is also a powerful way to know yourself. By helping others, you discover your strengths, weaknesses, and deepest motivations. Some ways to practice service include volunteering, dedicating time to causes you are passionate about, such as education, health, or the environment. Small acts of kindness, helping a neighbor, listening to a friend, or simply smiling at a stranger. Spiritual mentorship, sharing your knowledge and experiences with those seeking guidance on their spiritual path. Self-knowledge as the path to light. Self-knowledge is not a destination but a continuous journey. Each technique, each practice, is a step toward understanding your true nature and realizing your divine potential. As an anonymous adept wrote, to know oneself is the first step toward enlightenment, and the last as well. The path to discovering personal purpose and destiny. For the Rosicrucians, destiny is not a predetermined path, but a blank canvas that each individual paints with their choices, actions, and level of consciousness. Personal purpose, far from being a hidden secret in the stars, is a seed planted in the soul, which blossoms when aligned with universal laws in service to the common good. This section explores how Rosicrucian teachings can guide you toward discovering your unique mission and realizing a destiny that transcends the individual. Purpose as an expression of the soul. Purpose is not an external goal, but the manifestation of the inner essence. The Rosicrucians taught that each soul has a unique energetic signature, a combination of gifts, passions, and challenges that define its contribution to the world. To discover it, they proposed 3 key questions. What makes you feel alive? What connects you to pure joy, beyond the ego? What would you do even if no one recognized it? Selfless action reveals the call of the soul. What pain or challenge in your life could become a gift for others? Wounds are seeds of wisdom. The 7 Rosicrucian laws of destiny. According to tradition, destiny is governed by universal principles that, when understood, allow one to align life with the cosmic flow. 1. The law of correspondence. As above, so below. Your inner world is reflected in your external reality. To change your destiny, transform your consciousness. 2. The law of attraction. You do not attract what you desire, but what you are. Cultivate virtues such as gratitude and compassion, and your life will align with your purpose. 3. Free. The law of sacrifice. True destiny requires letting go of what no longer serves, toxic relationships, negative habits, or limiting beliefs. 4. The law of service. Your purpose is always tied to the well-being of others. As the Fama Fraternitatis says, he who loses himself in service finds himself. 5. The law of synchronicity. Meaningful coincidences are guides from the universe. Learn to read them as signs along your path. 6. Law of transformation. Destiny is not static. Every conscious choice is a turning point that redirects your trajectory. 7. The law of unity. Your individual purpose is a thread in a cosmic tapestry. By fulfilling it, you contribute to collective evolution. Rosicrucian techniques for discovering your mission. The map of the inner Codex. Inspired by Christian Rosenkreutz's secret Codex. This exercise uses symbols to explore your path. Draw a circle and divide it into 4 quadrants: passion, talent, service, and legacy. In each section, write or draw whatever comes to mind, without filters. Look for connections between the quadrants. What pattern emerges? B. The meditation of the golden rose. Visualize a golden rose in your heart. With each breath in, imagine a petal opening, revealing a word or image related to your purpose. With each exhalation, repeat, "My destiny is light, and the light guides me." C. Dialogue with the inner teacher. The Rosicrucians believed in an inner guide, a wise voice that speaks in silence. To connect with it, write a letter asking, "What is my mission?" Switch hands. If you're right-handed, use the left, and vice versa, and write the response that comes intuitively. The 3 enemies of destiny. On the path toward purpose, the Rosicrucians warned about forces that can derail you. Fear of personal power. Believing you are not worthy of your greatness. Distraction by the material world. Chasing external success rather than internal fulfillment. Spiritual arrogance. Thinking you've arrived and ceased to grow. The solution, according to the Confessio Fraternitatis, is simple but profound. Walk with humility, look with awe, and serve with love. Destiny and free will. The Rosicrucian balance. The Rosicrucians did not see destiny as a rigid plan but as a range of possibilities. Your free will determines which of them materializes. Imagine your life as a river. The course, destiny, is defined, but you can navigate it with resistance or with flow. The key is to align your will with the higher will, a concept echoed in the motto, "Do your will, but let it be one with the light." Legacy, when purpose transcends time. True destiny does not end with your physical life. The Rosicrucians spoke of the body of light, an immortal form of consciousness that endures through inspirational works, art, writings, or actions that elevate others. Disciples or successors, those who continue your work and amplify your impact. The memory of the universe, the idea that every act of love is recorded in the Akasha, cosmic record. The final call. Are you ready to decipher your Codex? The lost Codex spoken of in the manifestos is not a physical book, but the unique code of your soul. Deciphering it requires courage to face your shadows, faith to trust the process, and love to serve unconditionally. As an adept wrote in the 17th century, destiny is not found, it is created. And by creating it, you become a co-creator of the universe. The end.